Perfect. Thanks very much, Yola. Thanks for coming along. I am going to go through Stamp 1G today. So the third level graduate program. You're all obviously very capable of reading. So one of my pet peeves is when people read slides line by line, so I am not going to do that. But you can see there what we're going to cover today is kind of around the practicalities of the scheme. What it is, how it came about, when you can move on to it and what that means, okay? So a little bit about me. Once upon a time I worked in the immigration office, and it gave me maybe an insight into how they think. That was way back about a decade ago, though Burkey was the same size then as it is now, which is why appointments are so difficult to come by. I'm based in, I need to change that slide now, I'm based in UCD Global, which recently changed its name, but I'm one of the student advisors, so I kind of wear many different hats at different times. So the third level graduate program, what is it? So it is, it's a stay back option basically for people once you have completed your studies. And you can see there a section of what's called the National Framework for Qualifications. So pretty much everyone in this room is going to be probably level 9, I imagine, because you're all master's students. PhD is level 10, and degrees are level 8. So the third level graduate program applies to level 8, 9, and 10. People who are studying a level 8 program get a 1 year stay back, 12 months, and people level 9 and above get up to 24 months. So it's 12 months and then renewed for another 12 months after that. So you've got to go back. My hope had been when the program was initially talked about that it would be the full 2 years, and that might lead to multi-year permission, but that did not come to fruition, unfortunately. So the evolution of the program. So it was introduced way back in 2007. And when it was first introduced, it was an additional 6 months. And it was a 6 months extension of your Stamp 2 permission. So nobody was able to tell who was a student and who was a graduate. And that caused consternation. People spent basically their 6 months trying to convince employers that they were actually a graduate and not a student. And then it changed, so it was amended in 2011, which is when we got our first real guidelines around student immigration in Ireland. So they're still not even a decade old. So Ireland really specialised in exporting people, and we are new to importing people, and we still haven't gotten it right. We still really struggle with it, as many of you will know if you had to make the appointment at Burkey. But it was amended in 2011. That's when they made it a Stamp 1G, and that's where it went to 1 year. And then in 2017, it was amended again, and that's when they made it the up to 2 years for those people who were studying a master's or a PhD. So that's how it developed. So what is it, and what does it actually mean? Well, what it really means is that you can work full-time. And that particularly around that first year, right, when you move on to it, that there are no limitations around the work categories or what the salary is. That will, that changes a little bit when you go back to renew for the second year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I suppose the thing to note is one of the things that sometimes you can do, if you've done a master's, you can do a year of the 1G. You could go back and do a PhD program, and then at the end of that, get the second year of the 1G. But the maximum length of time that you can have 1G is 24 months, and the longest time you can be on the program, or most number of times, is twice, okay? So that's really important to remember. So say you complete your studies here and you move on to the 1G in October, and then suddenly you're moving on to a PhD program next May. So that time that you spent on the 1G, okay, say if it's 7 months, you can't get the the extra 5 months back. You lose those 5 months, right? So just sometimes people can think they can tack that on to the other side of it, but you can, the important thing to acknowledge is that you can re-enter at a higher level after you complete on the 1G, as long as you remain within the overall 8-year limit. So the limit, and this is where there are intricacies within Irish immigration. So usually it's a 7-year limit for students, but they made it 8 when they amended the 1G 2 years ago now in 2017. But the 8-year only applies to people who have been on level 9, then had a 1G, and then done a PhD. Doesn't apply to people on level 8, okay? So that's what it is. It's a stay-back option for you for up to 2 years. So the important things then is what is it that you need to qualify. So the really important thing there is that you have to have current Stamp 2 permission. And again, around that, as long as if there's a little bit of a gap, say do most people here get permission up until December of this year? Yeah? Anyone get permission for shorter than that? Yes? When did you get permission until? You're not sure? But not December?
No.
Okay.
September.
Okay. So,
A year from the day it is.
okay. So you depending on when you're going to move on to the scheme, you may have to extend it out. But let's say you were moving on to the scheme in early October. That would, if it's 2 or 3 weeks, it's not going to be a huge issue, okay? It's just if, say, your permission expired at the end of September and you weren't moving on until December, then you would have to extend your Stamp 2. So most people now get 15 months as such, but 15 months from the start of their course, which brings them to the following December. And that was because of the gap, because you guys don't tend to get your results until October, okay? Yeah, but you won't, if your Stamp 2 is expired, then you won't be able to work.
But if I'm not working until December?
But that gap, you would still need to, it depends on how long the gap is. You couldn't leave a gap of months and months.
Okay, I can't just leave and come back.
No, you cannot. If you do that, you will get tourist permission when you come back, and you will not be able to move on to the Stamp 1G. Okay, so that's an actually really important point, is that's why having your Stamp 2 up to date is really important, and particularly for those who are non-visa required. I mean, anyone who's visa required isn't, will have your multi-re-entry permission has to be up to date anyway. But what can sometimes happen is for non-visa people, they leave the country and they come back and then they get stamped at immigration with a tourist permission and they can't move on to the 1G. So you need to ensure that you are on Stamp 2. Okay, that's really, really important that your Stamp 2 is up to date. And you can see the other conditions there are what I talked about. You can't access it more than twice, and you have to be within the time limits. But the most important thing is that you have to be on Stamp 2, okay? And also bear that in mind if you are undertaking any sort of internships or signing up to a graduate program with a company, because we sometimes have had, I don't think it has been here so much, but I know in computer science some people did internships last year and the company got them to switch on to a different stamp, onto an internship permission, and they then had huge problems trying to transfer back to Stamp 2 to get onto the 1G. So bear that in mind if you switch. And also around working with a company. If you get a critical skills permit, okay, that's great, that's fantastic, but if you decide 6 months into your critical skills permit that actually this isn't what I want, you can't then go on to the 1G. You have to be on Stamp 2 in order to move on to 1G. Stamp 1G is an extension of Stamp 2, essentially is what immigration see it as, and it doesn't, because of that, it doesn't count towards residency, okay? Same as Stamp 2. Yes, absolutely.
What if you want to go and travel in the summer, around September?
So that's a good question. So question for those who didn't hear is around going traveling. So there's no problem with going traveling as long as you have your stamp 2 is up to date, and if you're a visa required, that you have your multi re-entry, or and then you have up to 6 months to move on to the scheme. But obviously, you know, when you're on stamp 2, once the 1st of October comes around, you can only work part-time. And so that's the thing to consider there, okay? So anyone who's working over the summer, and when you're on stamp 2, you can work full-time for the months of June, July, August, and September. But once the 1st of October comes around, if you're on stamp 2, then you can only work 20 hours a week, okay? Yeah.
Okay, so if I finish my courses by the end of July, and the employer asks me when can I start working, when can I start working?
Okay, so you can start working then, but from the 1st of October, you can only work part-time, so you have to drop down to part-time hours until you move on to the 1G stamp.
Is there no way I can get like a paper from the university saying that I finished my courses to move on to this stamp?
No, it doesn't work like they have to see that you've completed you have your exam, like your exam results. So it's not that, because the way immigration see it is that you may have completed your course and you personally might be fine, but what if somebody failed, and then they have to go back to repeat. So that's how immigration see it. Okay, that's their rules. Unfortunately, not mine. This gentleman has a question here.
Once a company sponsors your critical skills visa, does your stamp change? Which stamp are you on if you have critical skills?
I'm not, my expertise is not on critical skills, but critical skills takes time it's different from, you're no longer on stamp 2, that's your student permission. So generally,
On stamp 2, but are we on stamp 4?
generally on the critical skills, you're on stamp 4.
Once we get the critical skills, we're on stamp 4, and if we decide to quit the job or whatever, we still have the stamp 4, right? We don't go back to stamp 4.
No, but you can't. There's a whole series of stuff around critical skills that you would need to read up on. You can't move job within the first year. There's lots you need to consider within that, and also there's a whole the basis of your permission. But what I'm saying is, if you're on critical skills and you quit your job after 6 months, you can't then get the stamp 1G. Okay, so with 1G. For that first year, if you're working, you can change jobs, you can do whatever you want, and particularly in that first year, okay, you can't do that, it's not like you can move back, okay? This gentleman had a question.
If we, let's say, get employed by October, in that case, will we be able to apply for the stamp 1G? Because within 6 months of obtaining our degree, we get our degree in December.
But it's based off of your results. It's not based on when you get the parchment. It's based on when you get your results. So once your results come out, then you can move on to stamp 1G. Okay? But well, during the summer you can work full time anyway. For the months on your stamp 2, you can work June, July, August, and September. Okay, on your stamp 2. So there's no problem there. Okay. Yes, this gentleman.
If I apply for a stamp 1G, and the next year I'm out of the islands, per se, in China or something, for 6 months, does it impact me applying for a second year stamp 1G?
Okay, so the second year of stamp 1G, yes and no. Okay, and this is the issue, I suppose, is when you're looking at in terms of the renewal for the further 12 months. Okay, so you can see there that efforts have been made to access graduate level employment. So it's as clear as mud. They don't want to really specify there, but if you leave for 6 months, It's also within Irish immigration legislation that everything is at the discretion of an immigration officer. So they could justifiably say that the permission to stamp 1G, the IRP card is a residency card, and that you weren't resident. So they may therefore want you to prove that you are going to be resident for the following year. So you would have to convince an immigration officer potentially of that. And that's where it comes up. And in terms of, so the renewal for the second 12 months is where things get a little trickier, because essentially you are dealing with individual immigration officers. So sometimes people have not had any issues at all. They've gone down for the second 12 months, they've showed their health insurance, and they've been stamped and given the card. Other times people have been asked, well, why isn't the company providing you with a critical skills permit? You've been there for 12 months. What's to say? What it really comes down to, again, is INES always want to see progression, okay? In the same way that people generally cannot do 2 degrees at the same level, or even masters, they want to understand the story. And in Ireland, we love stories. Irish culture is all about stories. And that bleeds into every single aspect of Irish culture. And it also bleeds into our immigration system. And so they want to understand the story. What is it that you're doing? Where is your journey taking you? Now, for a lot of people, it's going to be fine. Maybe you've just been working with the company for 6 months and they haven't had time to actually get to know you, and that there's a possibility of critical skills at the end. Maybe you're thinking a PhD afterwards. But if you're just in working as they would see it in retail, and you haven't made any effort to access a job that would provide you with a critical skills permit, they may not give you that second 12 months. Okay? They want to see that you've at least been making effort. So what does that mean? That means you've been applying, that you've been offered interviews, that you've been attending interviews. So that is really what they want to see. And where they'll have really big issues is where they feel people have been trying to circumvent the system. So if people have been doing nothing, and then in the 3 weeks leading up to their renewal, they've suddenly made applications to 300 positions, that's where they'll ask questions, okay? It doesn't mean you have to apply for loads and loads and loads, but it means they have to believe that you are making a genuine effort to obtain a job that will provide you with a critical skills permit ultimately, okay? So you probably want to look at the jobs that fit under either the general employment permit or the critical skills permit, and so that you're moving towards one of those. Okay, so general admin jobs are going to create issues because they won't give you a work permit. So if you're just in a general admin position and you're not looking for something outside of it, it's quite possible that they could turn around. It's unusual that they do because most people are making efforts, but you have to be seen to be actively seeking. So if you're in a job and your employer can provide you with a letter that's saying, well, we've had this person for X amount of time, they seem like a very good employee, if they continue to perform, we would consider providing the person or sponsoring the person for a critical skills permit, then that would really strengthen your case, okay? But that's what immigration are going to want to know, that you've been actively seeking. So that's where I'm saying the second 12 months causes renewing. The first 12 months, they don't really care. You're automatically going to get it once you get your results, but the renewal piece is where it gets a little bit trickier. So going back then, so what is it that you actually need to move on to the 1G? Well, it's very similar to what you had for Stamp 2. Immigration everywhere is interested in a number of things. That you are who you say you are, so your passport, and that you have medical insurance to cover you, and obviously that you have the fee to pay it. So in terms of medical insurance, you can see the different providers there. Study and Protect do offer a graduate insurance policy. You need to contact them directly in relation to that, though they hopefully will eventually put it up on the site and you can do it that way. Now, the thing to bear in mind around this, and I won't go into too much, is there is currently a court case playing out in Ireland around health insurance provision. The Health Insurance Authority of Ireland made a decision a couple of years ago that Study and Protect and the likes of Halligan, that the policies they were selling weren't in compliance with Irish law because they weren't available to EU citizens. Chubb, who are the company behind Study and Protect, have appealed that ruling. It's currently before the courts, so we're waiting to see what happens. Until the judgment comes out, everything is as it was, and when the judgment comes out, if you have a policy, the policy will be valid and will be honoured. Okay, it'll just mean that should the judgment go against Chubb, they won't be able to sell this anymore, and you will have to go with one of the Irish companies, VHI, Irish Life, or Leia. But with those, you would also probably need to have travel insurance as an international student, because while those are all very good policies, they don't provide the type of things that international students tend to need around family visits, repatriation, and that sort of stuff. So just something to be aware of. But for now, you have different options, and Study and Protect do have a graduate visa option. So just talking a little bit in terms of getting an appointment, because many of you will have had that frustration when you went to book an appointment. So these are some of the numbers that I had, and some of these have even changed. So UCD was at 4898 last year. We're now at about 5,600 students, as I said. Ireland, in last year, we had about 135,000 non-EU people in the country, but the Berkey office registered 72,000 people in 2017. It registered 85,000 people last year, and this year I was talking to my contacts. So in January, February of 2018, they registered about 10,000 people. January, February 2019, they registered 18,000 people. So a lot of the same frustrations may well come about. So when you are, in terms of booking your appointment, it's going to be, hopefully they're building a new system, but the new system is not in place as yet. They're talking about bringing in renewals by registered post. So any undergrads or any PhDs who are renewing their Stamp 2 would do so by registered post, but you guys are going to be changing Stamp to whether it's critical skills or whether it's the 1G, it's a change of stamp. So you are going to have to make an appointment at the Berkey office. So just to bear that in mind, that they have said the bots have been stopped, but people are still experiencing a lot of difficulty, and it is something that we raise with them constantly. So I haven't got the 2018 figures as yet, but you can see the jump in the number of people who accessed the third level graduate program there. It is something that I'm doing a lot of work with the IUA around highlighting, I suppose, that we would like to see it go to a 24-month stamp, that it shouldn't have that renewal piece, and also around the appointments, also working with ICOS and the this service improvement plan. I was saying I've worked in this area for about 14 years, works in the immigration office. I've never seen a service improvement plan, so I think that is progress of a sort, and hopefully things will improve somewhat, and that it will be easier for people to get appointments in September to December this year. Questions? Any questions? Yes?
So, an employer actually recently asked if, although results from my MA and I'm on the stamp 2.
Mhm.
How
When,
that-
when did you get the results from the MA? Because you have to move on within.
October, so they would, the end of October, so it would be coming up now that I would actually have to go forward with that if that was what I was going to do.
I can have a chat to you afterwards because that's a pretty unique situation. We'll have a chat afterwards.
I
Yeah.
have a similar question, but my previous master's was back in India.
No. No, it has to be in Ireland. Okay? Has to be from an Irish institution. Anything else? No? Yes.
Should we get our PPS number now? Would it be helpful?
There has to be a reason for you to get a PPS number.
If I'm actively looking for a job.
If you, depends on who you meet at the PPS office. Some people have been given them, and sometimes people meet people at the counter who want to see evidence of a job offer.
Oh, and not just interviews.
Not just interviews, no. Yes.
Apply for PPS chances talent for studying. Purpose of studying is allowed. Is that going to PPS for 5 classes 30 classes?
There you go. I think if you have a chat to this gentleman afterwards. Any other questions? Okay. Final points then. Okay. Understand that it can be a frustrating system. It probably will be in terms of booking appointments again this year. And if you're not already a member of the UCD Immigration Information group and you are on Facebook, please do join it because it's where I post a lot of updates. If we get any additional appointments, that's where I put them up. And if there are any changes in terms of the insurance or in terms of the appointment system itself, that's probably where the information is going to go first. Yes, you have a question.
As soon as we are done with the results, so probably around October, we can apply for something.
Yeah, as soon as you have your results. Absolutely.
And so after October, we will be starting working. So in our applications, there's a section of when are you eligible to work, when are you eligible to join it. So that should be after October then.
But that's really up to, because it depends on when you're finished. Like if you're handing in, I suppose, at the end of August, you can work full time in September, but it's going to be up to the company on how the company sees it. You can work in October, but you can only work 20 hours a week until you move on to the 1G. So it depends on how long it will be before you move on to the 1G, For some people it might be, a week. For some people it might be a bit longer. But you can work full time in September on stamp 2. It's just from the 1st of October you can only work part time.
It totally depends on the company when the company accepts you on the start to work.
Exactly, yeah. Yes,
Are there other visa options other than stamp 1G?
critical skills.
Other ones?
No. If you have a spouse or a partner who's Irish, there's a de facto option if you've been living together for 2 years, or there's marriage. Those are the options.
What about something like if the country that you're from has an agreement with Ireland that you can come and work as a young professional? Like, do a stamp 1G and then do that? Or what if the company is like, we just really like you and we want to hire you, so we'll give you some other kind of magic experience?
They would, the company would have to, they'd still have to provide, they would still have to have the work permit for you. So.
Would that be a 1G?
No, that would be, that would be, 1G is the addendum to stamp 2. It's for people who've studied in Ireland and then they're moving on to this stay back option. But the others are going to be work permits, You're not going to be able to work in Ireland without, there has to be a basis for the permission. So it needs to either be a relationship or a work permit.
But I mean, like, say, for example, you apply for a job and you don't have your stamp 1G yet, and they're like, oh, no worries, we'll just give you this other work permit.
But what the whole,
I
yeah.
don't know.
No, unfortunately it doesn't.
The secret work permit.
Yes.
Would it hurt your chances of getting any of the visas if you've done a work holiday?
No.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
And then you can do a work holiday after your master's. So that's what I was asking.
No. Well, if you went back home and you studied again at home, Then you could do,
Because there would have to be
Yeah.
an institution, not.
not an Irish institution. Yeah, you can't get the work holiday to be in Ireland from an Irish institution.
Okay.
Okay, it has to be from an institution at home. Okay, yes.
If you get an offer while you're on stamp 2 from a company and they are willing to sponsor your work permit or critical skills visa, then you can go back home and come back and on your re-entry visa, right? If it's valid up until December.
Absolutely, yeah.
You don't need a 1G. You can directly jump from 2 to 4.
You can, as long as that, but as long as that process is going to go through, because not every application for critical skills is successful either. So as long as you're confident in that, absolutely. Anything else? Okay, perfect. Cheers for coming along, guys. Thanks.